Okay.
Welcome, everyone. A few years back, I used to think that inclusion makes unrealistic demand on teachers. Inclusion is okay for some, but it isn't for everyone, especially those who are intellectually disabled. There are many myths around misconception. If you are someone who gives due weightage to inclusion and differentiation in your classroom, then this session is for you. Please welcome Ms. Mariyakutty Mathew, who is a doctorate scholar of education and an English facilitator in an IB school. She's also a tech enthusiast who loves to integrate technology in her classroom. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Anila, for your warm welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all the educators around the globe and non-educators and administrators who are here today to listen to my session. Hi, Anila, could you please help me to share the screen? I am. And hello, Yasin. Welcome back again after a long time, and I'm very happy to see you are here. And I'm not sure about the familiar names. If you could pop up, I had many people been following up with us for the session, as usual. So today, what I'm going to talk about is about inclusion and differentiation, a very familiar, maybe commonly used topic. Um, Anila, is it happening?
Yeah, I think you have to again share it. There is some
So,
problem. Yeah.
give me a moment. Oh, sorry for the pause. Okay. Yeah. Differentiating for success in the class is a very simple line that me and Asna actually tailored together because it's not the success that I'm talking about, students scoring very high marks and becoming the top scholars of the world, or it's not the success that I'm talking about, the rank holders that we are going to give birth in the future and saying that this is one of our best schools that have been implementing the very successful pedagogies for the uh, highest rate of performance for the students, or it's not a product generating aspect that I'm going to talk about today. Rather, it's more of a humane approach, or the ideal approach that I read and understood by observing, listening, viewing, practicing, and experiencing and talking to students, teachers, parents, colleagues, friends across the globe, online, personally, and otherwise through observation. So this is a concept that I thought I should bring into the limelight of all the educators and administrators in terms of how do we approach all the learners in the classroom. Though we have a curriculum guided, instructed, sequenced, and guidelines given to support the success criteria and the learner outcome. So, welcome again. This is my short introduction and the whole prior knowledge. Prior knowledge that I wanted to build in all of you when I go deeper into my presentation. This was more of an experiential information and connecting to the courses that I've been doing to master the same concept as well. So can be disagreements, there can be agreements, but I think I empathetically understood this concept to bring this learning to the audience that who are listening to me today. So, inclusion and differentiation in a classroom, as usual, I wanted to bring a learning model that we educators can take up to understand a pedagogy to apply in the classroom. So, this is David Cope's learning style, where it will help us for a lot of planning and reflecting on our teaching practices. So I've nurtured this whole idea through the lens of if and why through experience, and I have a little bit of why and what while reflecting the teaching practices, how and what to conceptualize the action plan while planning the differentiation in the classroom, and if and how what are the decisions and actions can be taken to authentically practice this pedagogy. Because I we cannot say as an educators that all the pedagogies are perfect right fit. Schools are meant to facilitate students, and we cannot say we can facilitate only so many number of students, only this type of students. It's a home for learning. So irrespective of the number of students we have in a class or a school, whatever we say, if an educator put her heart and mind and soul into this whole teaching learning practice or the job that she is there for, the purpose, I'm sure to some extent we can take care of this inclusion and differentiation in a classroom. For me, very interesting, a highly volatile, versatile thinking. Some, I that's how people tell me sometimes when I talk about multiple subjects integration, or I bring in and blend in. We do have it differentiated teach educators also around the world. Maybe I have been identified one among like that. I've been an inclusive student in my class when I was in my school, when during my schooling. But I felt wonderful of later, I was able to understand all my students being a differentiated one because of my thinking, because of my critical thinking ability, more of a creative side. So this is what happens to a student. That's what I felt, when we look at a subject and I'm going and giving delivering the lesson to the student in every way, the same way. There are some students look at me like, what's happening? So that's when these type of observations help me to to sensitize me of what's happening, and I was very curious what's happening inside these students and how we can take care of this. I'm talking about a class that I'm taking care of where I have more than 40 in number. But I'm telling you, educators, it's not about the experiential classroom or fancy classroom, or you need only 18 students with a lot of things that need to be, taught with lot of things again, a lot of technology. I'm talking about a normal teacher and student. Inclusion is possible, but it all depends on the way teacher is looking at it and taking care of the whole idea. This picture, this cartoon, if you observe, what came to my mind is when I'm talking about pedagogy. So I'm going diving deep into the pedagogy now. I've been reflecting much of my impressions on inclusion and differentiation so far. Think about your current teaching practice in terms of how inclusive that is. I am not pointing this question at an educator or questioning an educator, are you not inclusive? No, no. I am helping the educator to think that are we trying to think for a learner, a different type of learners, or while we taught the learners, are we able to see some differences in terms of their understanding, in terms of their listening, where the way they sit, the way they respond. That's what I wanted educators to think. And maybe I want all the educators who are listening to me to think how and why it's happening. So this is one solution given to a teacher. A tree was shown and was asked to climb, and what I liked about this teacher is he wanted them to climb in their own way. The idea is to climb the tree. That's exactly what I want a teacher to think in terms of teaching and learning practices. The ideal aim is the learning goal is everybody climbing the learning to climb the tree in their own way. He's not insisting there is a pyramid followed there, step one, step two, step three, step four. That's exactly the thought process that we need to build in terms of understanding inclusion pedagogies. So setting this mind, having this mindset, I hope you will be able to resonate very well with me what I'm talking further about. So I did refer to authentic resources and took few professional courses before talking to all of you to confirm if my action and thought process is almost similar. So almost, yes, similar. I'm very happy to share that points as well. So this is what I've understood what is inclusion and convinced. Definition from the Center for Studies on Inclusion Education: supporting everyone to feel that they belong, and increasing participation for children and adults in learning and teaching activities, learning and relationships and communities of local schools. The moment we think about inclusion and differentiation, it's about disabled students or some student with ADHD or an distractive student, behavioral deviation. They are only one person. Maybe we can think about SEND department can take care of that. But I'm sure there are variety of learners who need different type of learning needs to be met. That is exactly the inclusion and differentiation that I'm talking about. The best part is if you are preparing yourself and planning a lesson and walking into a class an inclusive teacher, you will be a teacher with a lot of variety to understand and connect to the students, where one idea will automatically can be regenerated and shared in various ways. So all what I'm saying to all the educators is be inclusive within yourself, be inclusive in terms of planning and preparing your lesson, though we have a lot of norms set with us. The moment you look into students, trying to connect to students, understand students, going to their level, to some extent, unconditionally, we will become inclusive. Four questions that I wanted to think, help you to think, to practice this, bring into your daily practice to be an inclusive teacher, because I believe the learning needs and learning needs are increasing. Some are very evident to us, some are not, and some are hidden. Ideally, we want our learners to understand what's been taught and help them for the future, apply them in real life, in whichever curriculum they are in. Whatever curriculum they are in, the base and the concept thoughts are almost similar. And in India, at least NCRT is being NCRT guides the any curriculum implementation, be it IB, be it Cambridge, be it CBSE. All the curriculum need to support the NCRT guidelines. So being inclusive is also equally important. I do come across this justification. We have a lot number of students. This is it's not an experiential classroom. The capacity is different. The resources are different. It's not, inclusion and differentiation has mostly nothing to do with that. But it would be good if we have so many things. That's what I will say. Because I have taught in all the classrooms that I've been mentioning so far. I'm a living example as well. So, four questions for teachers to think, and I would appreciate if you could write down your thought process as I'm talking more about the inclusion, concept of inclusion for the new type of classroom that we are in. Maybe I may say 21st century, it's been spoken about 21st century skills, 21st century club, but whatever it is, it's a fancy term for me because learning theories are same. It sets the base, and from there we derive a lot of theory models, applications. Yes, of course the approaches have been changed due to the demand and the type of empathy that we try to develop in children. We understood the need of informed choices, so that's the type of transition I have seen. However, whatever century it is, we as facilitators need to have some thought process going in our mind to facilitate what is required for the challenging future. Future is challenged way beyond what we are in today. That I'm sure all the educators understand what's happening on the trend of the world. So, four questions are: how does your school try to include everyone? This is again, remember not to pick on someone. I want everybody to think that way, so that we find the sources or channels that schools are including or ways to include. That is why this question is being asked, provocating. These are all provocation questions. What have you tried as a teacher? What works well for you, And what are the challenges? Again, you may say so many barriers that you have come across in your system, maybe due to the leadership team or the middle level barriers, but the irrelevant, irrespective of all that, this is irrelevant. What I'm saying is, have you as a teacher, the 45 minutes that you had in your class, your presence in your class can be more useful to the students than be going behind whatever it is. And that 45 minutes is solely for us. There you can be exclusively inclusive and teacher, offering differentiation, making the learning more interesting for the students, so that you draw the attention of your learners towards you, to like learning, to engage in the learning, to evolve learning, and wait for the next learning to grow. That's the way I wanted to explain this or express this. From my many set of reading, common aspects of inclusion about how an education should think about. Well, I took the support of British Council again. I would say inclusion in education involves process of increasing the participation of students in the cultures, curricula, and community. So, if any educational administrators listening to me, that's what I say. Somewhere down the line, if we could blend in this aspects, redesign, reform every new academic year, thinking about we have multiple type of learners, let's reform and rephrase some part where without hitting the current flow of the system, and let's make something inclusive. Yes, a lot of inclusive practices are already happening in schools, but I'm saying making it more inclusive so that most of the students have some opportunity to develop their learning skills. It may go hidden, especially for the schools who's having large capacities. That is why, I am here to deliver the session so that I enlighten the educators. So each educator has to think that, my students, whoever I am catering, should be taken care of inclusively. Let me differentiate my instruction so that I, at least to some percentage, facilitate the learning needs of my learners. Inclusion is concerned with the learning participation of all students vulnerable to exclusionary pressures. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's not really about the impairments categories as having special education needs. There are a lot of other pressures contribute to this inclusion. We have no idea what student needs at the end of the day, or why that student is not learning when we don't see any evidence of impairments. Lastly, very important point, inclusion is concerned with improving schools for staff as well as for the students. It is hard to start. I've been talking to a few of the, through writing, to talking about our administrators' view of changing a shift in assessments and patterns. So looking at the numbers that they facilitate, sometimes the growth mindset will miss due to the pressure of handling students, because students can be challenging. I do agree. But in a slow process, if we can start today or tomorrow in terms of improving the school staff and deviating their mind to from the routine to this type of growth mindsets and exclusive strategies that we can implement in the teaching and learning styles, I am sure in somewhere down the line, in few months and few years, things will start changing. And if one of the educator like me could do so much and think this way, I'm sure another 10 educators can be. We are all at the end of the day share the same platform with normalcy under the same curriculum guidance, similar routines and course being practiced across the schools. So definitely, I'm sure if educators can hold their hands together, reflect and understand in this lens, through this lens, I'm sure somewhere we could bring a change. Action taken and inclusion. So I've been shifting the cycles from if, why, what, reflecting, so much on reflection. I wanted to talk more about actions in IBPYP also. At the end of the day, whatever we teach, we look for authentic actions, action taken by students in terms of their understanding about the world and application of that knowledge theoretically to practice whatever been taught from the pre-K. So, similarly, a teacher should also have this type of inquiry mindset while planning their lessons. What are the action that I'm taking forward after this learning and after implementing? What are the things that I should look for and should be doing? So, the action, one of the unique concept about inclusion and differentiation, which you may not find in literatures, research papers, or any other books, is the visual that I'm showing you. Simple theory of inclusion is nothing but understanding the difference between equality and equity. If somebody could help me out with your understanding, what is equality, which picture is equality, and which picture is equity? Is it number one, two, and three? If you could help me out, I would understand. I'm able to understand if somebody could be able to resonate what I'm talking about. So, equality for me is when the school offered to stand upon the same size blocks to watch the match. Good. But indeed, the third fellow might not be able to see. The second image is equity. We facilitated whatever is required to watch the match and brought everybody into the same dimension. The third one is again equity. We removed the bar so that all the three could watch the match. Your lesson planning or approaching the students is as simple as that. Please apply where we need equality and apply equity more wherever you feel that learner needs more support, and lift the learner to achieve the learner outcomes so that learner will embrace the learning, be it in any curricula, any classroom. So this is what I was explaining. So two provocating questions in this aspect is, can you think of any examples of this difference between equity and equality in your own context? What does it mean for inclusive practice? These are the two things that I would recommend educators to write down in some diary or your note and keep reflecting, where can I do this in my practice every day? Yes, I spoke so much. Even I, as an educator, initially when I heard these topics being taught, be trained, I had these questions inside me. Barriers are there. It can be only a cause. But so if you are a person who look for solutions towards the problem and you can have that ideal way to convince, communicate, and practice, I'm sure we can solve this. But yes, commonly expressed barriers to highlight this is I'm highlighting this because at least the people who are working in all the levels, from decision makers to policy makers to mentors of education and the instructional leaders to teachers, would rethink about it, and it will be great if you could rethink about it so that we support more students. Competition in education for places and resources, it's been increasing. Lack of funding for additional support for students who need individual support. Yes, I cannot say all schools can afford this, but teachers, use your talent, skills, bring out something. Any technology into the classroom, even a piece of paper will make a difference. A pen, a pencil, eraser, box, whatever stationery is in the classroom can make a difference in terms of bringing inclusive learning. Work for it and think for the students, we will figure out something. That's what I'm saying. Both physical support from people such as teaching assistants and financial support for classroom resources. Yes, gradually when a need is addressed in a very systematic way and it is reasonable, and if we can prove to the management that it will work, and if we can produce some outcome, I'm sure over a period of time they will get convinced. A sudden change in a huge system is not possible, and it is not healthy for the students also. It will shake. So slowly, steadily, gradually is the process that I am talking about can be implemented in your system. IBS, of course, it is always possible. There are no excuses for any IBP, YP teachers. So as the Cambridge, I think so. But then if any other national curricular teachers listening to me, this is my honest advice. Please start today thinking for your students and start practicing. Society's attitude and prejudices to certain groups, the pressure for results. Yes, of course. Even then, we can practice and support the learner needs to some extent. In any curricular teachers, I'm sure we cannot achieve anything to the fullest. But giving our hand to it, putting our thought and mind to it, working with students closely, students evolve. They give back the result. We don't have to give 100%. But the moment student realizes our compassion, determination for him, and the way we help him to realize the learning need and celebrate the learning in the class, I'm sure most of the students will fall in place. It all is in the hands of an educator. Let's reflect who's included and who's excluded. How do you know? So baseline for a class teacher or the subject teacher, whom are we including? It's one fantastic to listen to those students always give us answers and give fantastic work. It is not fantastic when we have students who don't respond, but I think that should be our focus. The students who wanted to give you everything will always give you, but those masters, intelligent people, unseen talent sitting behind those people who are always performing is somebody better or maybe beyond what we can imagine. How do you know that? Go into them, understand them, talk to them, analyze them. They will start connecting to the teacher. Concept of unconscious bias. So this is a very important video. I am not going to play. I have a lot of inspirers and influences from the globe. Why I'm talking about this unconscious bias is because, sorry that I'm not connected this. Teachers, we develop this unconscious bias about students. Administrators, leaders, everybody may again start the unconscious bias towards any system, but that is unstoppable. It's okay. As far as educators, it's a challenge for us. We cannot prove ourselves, rather we can facilitate throughout, and the settlement that we have is within ourselves and not someone. Today they may say you've done a good job, but tomorrow it may not be so. Let's not buy that. Rather, I feel that once you get the teaching learning into your heart, just go on. And that more of being insightful is most important. What's happening around you, being mindful is most important. It's okay to be not okay. So this unconscious bias is something that I feel educators, we need to be very mindful, and should take it out of the mind or work with your mind in terms of understanding our students. This is one of the biggest example. African story writer said, so her name, she's very famous. Her name is Shimanada Nagorsi. So I will play her video. Just listen to her for 5 minutes and 20 seconds. It will change your world. So she's Shimanada.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria.
Sorry. What happened?
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria, I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes. And we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. My characters also drank a lot of ginger beer because the characters in the British books I read drank ginger beer. Never mind that I had no idea what ginger beer was. And for many years afterwards, I would have a desperate desire to taste ginger beer. But that is another story. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read. I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived
Miss Mariya, we
in
can't see the video.
Nigeria.
Okay.
We didn't have
Just a
snow.
minute. Let me share that again. I'm sorry. So full
If you can
screen
make
has
it.
a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Let me start.
Could not form ponytails could also exist in literature. I started to write about things I recognized. Now, I loved those American and British books I read. They stirred my imagination, they opened up new worlds for me. But the unintended consequence was that I did not know that people like me could exist in literature. So what the discovery of African writers did for me was this. It saved me from having a single story of what books are. I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, living domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this. She had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. I must say that before I went to the US, I didn't consciously identify as African. But in the US, whenever Africa came up, people turned to me, never mind that I knew nothing about places like Namibia.
So, unconscious bias. Having said that, see the impact, and I'm thankful to her how strongly she expressed it. That's where we need to think now. The type of books, the type of storybooks, the content being spoken to the students, they are not at fault. Sometimes I wonder when I ask open-ended questions about some situations. I was teaching a very interesting poem, Hayavata. And see, I should thank whosoever has given me the opportunity to teach, my principal ma'am. I could reflect so much from every chapter. There was an intention being, thoughtful intentions for drafting the textbook. And I used to sit and investigate every 2 days before that. I go into the class. What is the purpose of this chapter? Why? So Hayavata is about the boy who understood the language of animals, and he called them brothers and Hayavata's chickens. While teaching in IB, I never connected to such a wonderful poem that helped me to talk to children about the connection to the world and animals that a child can, how that empathetic and kind-minded, pure heart of a child is, because it's ruined by the technology nowadays. So when I express this in this way, the type of feeling that I'm having towards my children, the next day my students came and said, "Ma'am, I looked at some birds. I played with my pup for some time. I sat with my parents. I called my grandmother. I felt that 5 minutes of feeling that I shared and passed on to my children, that is 40 plus 40, made a difference." And I was very happy, at least the 2 days, maybe some, but at least most of them have not spent their time digitally. And I check with them, just a friend. So teachers, maybe a 5 minutes of your day or a 2 minutes that you spend in your classroom, if we can resonate, and I'm not saying I'm a perfect teacher, I've done everything well, but I'm sharing the learning that I had and I tried to do it in my class made sense to me and for my children. And the way they came back to me happily for the next part of the story was the best part. And what is next, ma'am? We want you to explain. So that's my motivation. That was my intrinsic motivation, what I'm talking about. So for me now, you ask me, it's not about the classroom, it's not about the curriculum, it's between a teacher and a student. What you are preparing for them and how you want them to learn matters a lot. So unconscious bias, I work on me every day after understanding this concept. No bias. Every day I feel the child has changed, something new has happened to him. I look at my students a new way. I don't have something at the back of my head. So my teaching becomes more effective. So I was able to see new changes in my students. That is why educators, I'm here sitting in front of you and sharing this. Yes, it will happen. And love them. Then they give you back the love. They learn. And they say sometimes, "Miss, ma'am, English exam, we are very happy. We'll study very well because we love you." Okay. I said, that's the best award in the world. So that's the way I believe students will come back to us. Yes. So this is what I was talking about, reflecting on how students learn. So I have points to say, but I thought I'll take the support of the actual points that is given by the British Council through a lot of research and convinced by different professionals around the globe. So this is how we can look at it look at learning differences in a classroom in a very simple way. Differences in the way students learn can be grouped into 4 different areas. What are they? They gain knowledge or think, cognitive differences. They communicate and interact with others. Their bodies impact on learning, sensory and from get excited and then not on the seat. The emotional and mental impacts on the learning. I don't stop either of the learners. Sit down properly, look at me. No. You stand, you enjoy my lesson, please do it. As far as you are learning, I'm happy. That's an informed choice that you can offer to the student. Yes, of course, he's running around doing nothing, and no, that is not. This one student, a favorite student of mine, runs around the classroom and learn. Initially, I was little skeptical about it, and I have that catastrophe effect there. But then later, I understood he's also learning. I saw that smile, and in between, I popped up some provocating questions. He answered. I settled me. That's what I wanted. He didn't disturb me. And then his friends started adapting that. Neither I didn't want them to roam around because he is that type of a learner. So it became more of an inclusive atmosphere and it is going well, but everything under the control and supervision of the teacher. I'm not saying you have to let it go everything. Informed choices are important. I'm coming to that where we do the differentiation technically. So, teachers' questions. I spoke so much about it. I pour a lot of patriotic feeling towards this concept. I know everything, but so as coming down to narrowing this whole thoughts to normality, you have all these questions. I'm sure you can think about it, work on it. It is not possible quickly. It is possible. Who are practicing, it is going to be possible. It is challenging. That's why I support all the teachers who's having the barrier and challenges. And I do have barriers and challenges, but still, if we stand up and continue our practice, people will support us. How can we help the learner access the curriculum beyond what is given to you, being instructed to you, taught to you, guided by you? You have to think for it. How can we adapt the curriculum to meet the learner's needs? Whatever is given to us is only a base, but we have to plan. It's beyond even your lesson plan. Can we ask the therapist to talk to us? So this is what you need to think for a child. So this question, the third one, when you see a child really deviated from disturbed behavior or ADHD, or because normally class teachers, not some professionals, has to identify. Some teachers are trained for it. To some certain extent, I am very close to these children and I am able to support them, and I've been working on that quite some time. So it is effective when we take that support, so that a therapist has an intervention and we support that learner with some disorder so that he settle in the classroom and continues learning, so that we don't deny his right to education. Please, teachers, any exclusive children like that, support him. His right to he has his own rights of education. We have no right to exclude him from the class. How can we make the learner with poor emotional health change his behavior? Again, fitness to the classroom is 100% a class teacher's responsibility along with the support of others. Please support them emotionally. Number of students doesn't matter. One teacher can make you different to 1,000 students. What training can we get to help us understand our own triggers to certain learners and to change our beliefs and systems about learners with poor emotional health? First, we need to fix ourselves. Remove unconscious bias. Walk into classroom as a new person every day. Look at your students as a developed new learner every day. It will solve our issue. How can we assess work so that all learners achieve? Give some technical assessments, change of swift of assessments. A child cannot answer a question. Help him out to explain the question another way so that you understand that he needs something different to answer the question. These are the simple things we can at least do to the primary years so that he gets adapted to the world. Later, he can be independent. He can adapt to the differences that he's been exposed to. Champions of inclusions is one of the concept that's booming up nowadays. I was just researching more about this inclusive teachers. It was all from different parts of the world, but I was thinking, let me figure it out from my place. To my surprise, the Better India had tons of articles, those principals, administrators, coordinators who was working exclusively with these little children, who working in the government sectors, non-charitable organizations, It's beyond private schools. I think private schools are much enriched and lavished with the with their budget. I think we should also start up something like that. These people are making a huge difference. They are in the field to ensure these dropouts are not happening, and they are building the brilliant children. So this is one story of Anushya Jain. She is a dedicated 51-year-old headmistress of government primary school, doing amazing job. And I feel very bad that I'm talking, I'm not working to that extent. I adore her. So as many people like her. I'll show you. I was mentioning many a times you don't need so many fantasies in the classroom for inclusion. I'll show you another legend of India who's taking care of an inclusive classroom. There is no customary chairs or tables for these disabled children. They're lying down on the sack and learning. A legend. I'm ashamed of myself if at all I've told what I didn't have in my classroom now. It changed my mind. I should never say anything that is missing in my class. So I just need a space with my children. It's me and my students at the end of the day. If you have extraordinary things in the class, it is beyond this. I think it's a blessing. Teachers that you can do more. These teachers are doing fantastic job with these children. Classroom activities that reflect. So now coming to the main action where teachers are always interested to ask me what are the different activities we can give, what are the different type of planning we can do, especially in the IBPYP classroom where we need enormous integration in terms of value systems, building life skills, transdisciplinary skills, key concepts, isn't it? These are the few things that been commonly used. One is hot seating, where you have the specific type of groups that's been planned and seated and giving an opportunity for collaborative learning, and later the presentation. Register time, where you give a particular time for the student or a group in a different way, where same concept is being produced according to your lesson plan. Three before me is you are giving a group challenge where the count of three, somebody has to start a game or give an answer before you. Random act of kindness, that go and help each other who doesn't know, and can you teach and get back to me and say what he didn't know or how you helped your student to come up. Guess game, finish the sentence. Finish the sentence are those things that you can connect to the situations and scenarios, especially something that you need to take a good control of the class in terms of behavior or some inappropriate actions in the school. So inclusion and differentiation is not only about the learning of subjects, it's about building them holistically. So finish the sentence. Children, students, teachers can bring in some context into the classroom to finish the sentences and reflect and act and tell us what's happening and how to solve. At the end of the day, for every activity, it should be a problem solving. It should be a solution. If a child is trained to look for a solution than only pointing at a problem and saturated there, we are instigating that and training them. Child come to up for any issue. Let us help them to think and sort it out. That way develop that solving skill, at least solving attitude. So it works well. So inclusion and differentiation has a lot of intentions behind it. This is one of the group that I was mentioning. An inclusive classroom can look like that with simple benches and desks, and then you realign everywhere here and there. And sometime out of 3 to 4 hours in a week, 1 hour can be something like this that you plan. Not every day. 1 hour can make a difference in your plan. 1 hour can be an interactive. That makes a lot of sense there. So it all depends on teachers' creativity and mindset that we have built for our students. Having said that, I spoke a lot about inclusion. That is the core. What is differentiation? It's only a technique to promote inclusion in the classroom. If you want to bring in inclusion, we need to have a technique. So that's one of the techniques. So that's where I brought in differentiation. So what is this differentiation? For the same concept, same content, how innovative you are in simple words. That is differentiation. How learning takes place, so that learning is so you are ensuring accessibility of that learning to all the learners in the classroom. You may be wondering how it is possible in 45 minutes. No, take 2 periods then, next 45 minutes or the next day. Ensure in 2 days it's taken care of. Avoid rush. Rather, we ensure that our learners can be taken care of. It is not easy, teachers. I support you. And for me also, it's not easy. But what I'm saying is, let's keep trying so that we figure out our own strategies through our, because we are human beings, we evolve. Unless we keep trying, we wouldn't be able to figure out the solutions to this. Solution meaning supporting most of the learners with their learner needs. That's ultimately my goal when I speak about this. Being an inclusive teacher means simple things. To notice differences between your students and then plan and deliver learning ways that respond to these differences. Differentiation is about offering variety and choice. There is a teacher who mentioned, she's also a researcher, Carol Tomlinson. Differentiation means shaking up what goes on in the classroom. See, you cannot predict, you can differentiate at the moment. The moment you see it's not working well, let's differentiate, let's be prepared. Make sense of the ideas, expressing what they learn. Other day I did something in my classroom. I had the tape with me, and then I asked them to prepare a quick comprehension of Haivata, their reflection of what they want. If they were in Haivata, what is that they wanted to do, how they wanted to change their home environment. Quickly they wrote and pasted on the walls. I personally believe, though it didn't look very beautiful and fancy, it was not even attractive looking at that wall. But for me, that was the most beautiful art that I've seen in my classroom since many months. Of course, I moved it to systematically to the classroom as this classroom protocol. But at that moment, I didn't stop my children. I wanted them to write and express. I wanted them to be the Haivatas tomorrow. So I didn't stop. I did not induce the norms to my students. Instead, I stayed back and set my classroom protocol. So, what I'm saying is, as a teacher, you can balance the school norms and you can work equally with your students. So, my student pasted whatever they wanted on the wall. Evening, I stayed back and I took it off and I kept it at the right place and pasted it on the boards where it has to be kept as per the class protocols of my school. So both the ways a teacher could balance. Yes, little extra mile of effort was required, but I was happy both the ways. One, my classroom looks better. Two, my children had an exposure that day. So being positive and um, mindful is really important. Misconception, unconscious bias. So after talking so much, let me get back to misconception. Again, I'm sure something must have popped out, something like this, in any of the educators listening to me. One misconception about differentiation is that it's a huge amount of work because you need to create and deliver an individual lesson plan for each student in a class. That's some many schools are doing it. I've been doing it and I fought for it, and finally, not here this year, years back. And I justified by saying the differentiation is possible on spot, where don't expect a teacher to write multiple lesson plans of different for different students, which is not required. Differentiation is really just a quality and everyday practice. That is the change that I wanted to bring. This is what it is. This is the truth. Differentiation is really just quality of your everyday practice, the way you resonate, we resonate and connect to our students. Nothing else. Yes, for some demands, people may challenge us, but please inform them very politely and diplomat. You don't have to write 1,100 lesson plans. Yes, if something went very well, let's share in a collaborative meeting or share with the right people so that they pass. So then the other teacher can use it in the next time. Depends on how it works. Examples of everyday differentiation. Deliberately choose a particular student to answer a question. Simple things that who may not answer to you. Move a student nearer so that they are close to you. Some students who doesn't want to come close to us. Give some students an extra task who's very fast and champions of the class miss have done in 5 minutes. Have something for them to challenge. Ask a student to come to the board and illustrate under your guidance and your watch. Don't, if it's a younger children, schools don't advise it, neither teachers should not leave them to do it on their own. Yes, help them to be a teacher at the moment, because that child may have amazing reflection and real world connections that will support the learning of other children. Not always a teacher, student itself will support other students. We need students to stand up and influence the other friends too. So, few indicators while planning the differentiation. The content you give to the students. Please do not bombard a lesson for the day with a lot of videos, visuals, right? Have a balance. There is a limited attention span for the little children. We need to ensure that anything that is given in the class has a repetition and reinforcement. It shouldn't be different and different variations that will confuse the student and leading to zero understanding of the concept. Each time you use these resources, it should be a hierarchy followed, where each level of screening or using of this differentiation, each learner needs are taken care of. So if your lesson plan itself is a differentiation, has a differentiation, you will be preparing them. Some students will get the concept. Secondly, you are reinforcing the same with the video as set of visual learners. Thirdly, you are asking them to reflect and speak and reflect back with some inquiry questions. A set of another children are reflecting back. Lastly, have an open reflection and discussion or a game or a quiz, another set of. So mostly I think by then a batch that you have a pack will be only one or two where you miss out. I think again another reinforcement, possibly at least to some 70%, the differentiated lesson plans works very well. You don't have to differentiate there, we have differentiation within us and plan for that day. The type of task you plan, that's what I was mentioning, the type of outcome students produce. So always look for outcome, try to have a pause and inquire. Assessment as learning, assessed learning practices is very important. This has been spoken, many people disagree, it's possible. Assessment as learning is always keep assessing in an assessment way, plan your lesson. Start with the inquiries, have questions linked to the prior knowledge, provocate children. Keep assessing their knowledge every phase where you have. Always have a phase-wise planning and progression of your teaching. The way we group students when they're learning is very important. For that, we need to understand our students. So most of the concept I have explained, so I'm narrowing down to the takeaways for the teachers now about the types of lesson plans and the type of questions. So I brought in differentiation while making questions. So this is part of our lesson plan. So I brought in the type of questions that you can use for the same concept: open-ended, concrete, closed. So we need to have some homework with us to plan and craft these questions. So making concept questions, it will be difficult sometimes. First you make the concept and then make it grammatically right. Initially going for the language structures, you may not get the concept in place. That's what happens to me. I'm a big error maker in the same sense. Once I make the concept, I have to go through 2-3 times of review how a reader will understand. I'm a time consuming person for that, but if somebody asks me to write a concept, I'll write it faster. Yes, understanding our weaknesses and balances is very important, and with the support of the team is where we evolve. So that's what I suggest. So first develop your concept and formulate your question, then rephrase, rethink it several times before giving it to the students. Differentiating the group in a classroom. So I don't know how many teachers can manage this, but at least in IBPYP classroom, it's good to have these group planning, collaborative learning planner, where you have a grouping strategy for your students to ensure the learning objectives are delivered and learning outcomes are visible to certain extent in a differentiated classroom. So advantages works best for. So students with different knowledge, students with similar skills and knowledge, friendship groups, pairs, so all these type of variations of permutation and combinations good to be planned very well in advance once you are well aware of your students. I am sure, rest assured, this will work very well. Now, this is what I need to say. This is what I had years back. Do not fear differentiation. Simple. Get to know your students, acknowledging that they are individual people whom all learn in different ways, in different speeds. Ways and speeds is the term that should be always there in your mind. Look at the children who may distract you. Look for his way, look for his speed. If he's learning, let it go. If it's not, let's take the control over the student. working to include them by offering variety and choices in your class. Remember, continually including more children for more of a time. Honestly, I used to wonder. I taught 18 now. I mean, I love so many children in my class now because a lot of ideas coming in, lot of group can be formed, lot of projects can be done. So I felt that passion that I've dived in. I can sit with children for hours and hours, be it 40 children, 42 children, be it 80 children. Maybe I'm not saying I've become a guru of something, but I'm just talking about the transition that I had over years, when I wanted to really help children, because I'm very passionate about education and teaching children. That is why I'm sharing my passion and reflecting my passion to you educators, and I'm standing up for those children who needs attention, because I'm a teacher who will stand up for that students, and I continue my mission always. It's challenging. Sometimes the teacher can be misunderstood. Doesn't matter. Pat your tap, give a tap, and then continue. Children will reward you. Children will love you. Doesn't matter. Question to think here. Why is it important to differentiate in order to support inclusion? In what ways you differentiate in your classroom at the moment? Two questions to think, and I'm provoking you now. So, concept reflection is working, and experience is working, and it's cycling around this. Don't forget my COPS learning cycle. We are doing the COPS learning cycle. I'm also implementing a cycle here. Essentials of an inclusive teacher. We will find variety of educators in with variety of experiences, with variety of attitudes. Let's not change anybody. Let's love everybody. However, do not instill anything of yours to them. If you're open minded, being experienced, we may have a lot of learning from others too. However, if you are a teacher who's willing to be inclusive, please take care of these things. Teachers' attitude, teachers' understanding of learners' background. Don't go and teach someone. That's what I'm saying. Teachers' understanding of learners' learning needs, teachers' self-awareness of their own conscious bias. Who else can help the teacher identify the right people in the school? Somewhere in the corner, will somebody will be there to support you. Strategies the teacher might use to improve the situation. This is a guideline, biblical lines for you to keep it with you always. I'm sure we will discover somewhere how to work. So, having said that, I'll prove this to you. So many years of research with PYP, inclusion, differentiation, and all the concepts under the umbrella comes into IB. Actually, whatever is there from solo taxonomy to whatever is there has been adapted by IB, enhanced PYP program. However, I found something unique. Key concepts is the key to PYP planning. We teach key concepts through lines of inquiry. Children need to understand to derive these key concepts from the central idea to different lines of inquiries. Look at this teacher who discovered and designed the sign languages for the children, describing the key concepts. And I was sitting and practicing this, and I'm very thankful to this educator simply because now I'm very happy if I'm in a PYP classroom, I can actually show these things, what I am mentioning through the lines of inquiry. This is what I say, teachers. If you are into students, we will discover something for our students. I'm sure this teacher felt this is important. I never found something like this. There were a lot of literatures, evidences, learning outcomes, number of planners, program inquiries, matrix has been, but this is something that visually been screened and shown by the teacher. And hands off to that teacher who has done. So this is actually the mindset for inclusive classroom. So I'm sure this teacher is capable of teaching any students. Now coming to the cream layer of learning, whatever you have been teaching, differentiating, everybody looks for the product. It is also important for us to assess the learning, map the learning. Though we may not grade sometimes, there are schools who don't quantify them. We assess them through rubrics with guiding criteria. There are schools assess them with the rubrics as well as we quantify for the purposes as per the curricula. However, these ranges are important in terms of assessment. for primary children, even though you're differentiating. How does the approach to assessment encourage inclusion? When your assessment for learning, assessment as learning, assessment of learning, all the three levels of assessment we should an educator should be able to define and justify. For the routine schools, they have term exams where we have opportunity to define that formative assessments and summative assessments. However, when we look at it in a grading method through rubrics, we need a lot of more evidences to support the system. But I would insist all the schools to have rubric system, to have a constant monitor of the child development, especially in the literacy skills, LSRW. What evidence is used in your school to assess student achievement? How wide the range of assessment? This is for you to assess, understand, innovate, recommend, not to think that it's not up to the mark. In every schools have a design for a purpose, an action plan for its purpose, and it is smooth. But I'm sure all the schools are looking for innovation to best fit in all the learners. So let's think that. What could you do to widen the range of evidence you use for student assessment in your classroom? A simple assessment. Why do we have to change the whole assessment? You, as a teacher, having many hours, the simple dictation period, a simple formative assessment can be done in the revision task. Anything can be done very innovative way. What one thing could you try in the next week or two is something that I want all the educators to think. And this is something that you need to reflect. How inclusive is your school? Be a change maker. If not, assess and evaluate, and work towards closely with the management for the better cause. And a takeaway: remember, continually including more children for more of time is a helpful, realistic aim for inclusion. Involve any children. I am sure some children they may not make your day. They'll make your day terrible, but make it. One time, over time, your differentiation, knowledge, skills, and confidence will grow, and your teaching practice will continually expand, becoming continually more inclusive. This is what happened to me. So lastly, give me last 5 minutes. I like to share important resources that is newly trending in edutech, where you can engage students. One is the apps. One is a software called Scratch. Scratch. Um, okay, sharing it. Let me go to the Scratch. Miss Anila, are you able to see this, my page? Anila? Okay. So this is app called Scratch. I cannot demonstrate, but you can go to Scratch, see what I'm doing. So this is an interactive software where the children can develop any code from musics to animate, imagine, character. Very child friendly, very innovative. Lot of learning is there. So please use it, teachers. So I thought I should have a wonderful takeaway for all of you. This is called teaching through algorithm method. Algorithm is you have a set of series and dimensions where you have a plan from what is step 1, step 2, step 3. So a child who doesn't have an orientation of sequence, we can use this type of integrated app to give which note comes first, which note comes second, then third. So 1, 2, 3 makes a sound or something like that to develop that type of skill. So in IB classroom, it's really significant. Now, curriculum integration. So for example, you're teaching math, you have thousands of things you can integrate. Look at this activity and the literacy that we can. So this is the way integrate technology wisely and mindfully in your classroom. And another learning forum that you can use is 3P Learning, where a lot of updated information regarding the concepts that I've spoke has been shared. So that's for the folks for now. Thank you, educators, for this, for your time and listening to me. I hope my share would have helped you so much. Thank you, Anla, for hosting my show for today. And that's not my certificate. Yeah,
Sorry
it's
about
okay.
that. Ah, just a second. I think first I need to say about the session. It was thought provoking, Maria, and something that stuck with me how you explained that how all educators, all of us can hold hand, remove the barriers, and then it can make a huge difference. Also, what I liked about how you spoke about the fixing ourselves, sometimes as educators we feel that we are gurus, as you said, but how fixing ourselves and then also removing the unconscious bias. I really
Yeah.
like the video as well. I think we can share the link as well here because it wasn't going in the full screen and somehow I missed.
Okay. We
Yeah.
can give that. I think all the educators must watch that. Watch her. Good. Nice. It's a must-watch TED Talk. Give me a moment. You want it now? Okay.
Yes, you can share it. Maria, thank you. This is your certificate. I'm sorry about the previous slide, but as we know, we all are struggling, and sometimes technology do give us hard time. And also, I really want to thank you for illuminating us regarding the researches which is going around inclusion. As we started the session, that there are many myth and misconception. You really bursted all the myth that we have around it, and also I'm going back with knowing about educators how they have struggled with the resources yet how they can incorporate inclusion in the classroom. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Anila, for your feedback and the words. How do I share the link now with the people?
You can just simply type in, or you can share it with the private chat and I'll type in here.
Okay.
Oh, we have some comments here. Thank you, Yasmin, Surekha, Shushma, Jyoti, Bindu, and Sazia. um, I can show this. Yeah. So
Okay.
Bindu is saying she's sorry that she missed the beginning part. I wish I had sat from the beginning. Your explanation was too good. So Bindu, you can watch this because these are recorded videos. You can go back and watch it whenever you feel like. And also you can leave a comment. Maria will be able to answer you back.
I'm open for questions.
Yes, if you have any question, we have an expert here. You can type in and she will be able to answer you right away. All right, I don't see any question here. Maria, see you.
Okay. Thank you so much.